Cheers.
Hola.
Welcome to your election escape. Are we here? Don't give a fuck tonight.
Oh, hey everybody. Welcome to Late Night Snacks.
We're here
We
to
are your
provide you
hosts.
a distraction.
Yes. It is election night. Yes, we are aware of that.
Mm-hmm.
But we wanted to keep it light.
Mm-hmm.
So here we are.
Very
Tonight we're
well.
going to be talking about Roald Dahl's The Witches. We're going to be comparing the two movies.
Yep.
Possibly talking about the book a little bit.
Yep. We so are.
I am one of your hosts, DeWanda.
That guy.
Joined by that guy.
Who? What guy? That guy.
That guy, yes. So
what's up, everybody? How's everybody doing?
How's everybody doing?
Everybody surviving coverage?
Hopefully everybody's surviving tonight. So Mary has dropped by.
Mary has dropped by. Hello, Mary.
Very glad to see you.
Mother, haven't seen you in a while. B's always here.
And B is here.
Mm-hmm.
And Mel's in the comments.
Yeah, Mel?
Mm-hmm.
Mel, what up? How come you went with her? You're on vacation. Mel's on vacation.
Mel's on vacation this week.
Yep. All right. So, my legs terrible. So in the midst of my chaos and everybody else's chaos, we're going to bring you something just simple, just different.
Yeah.
And I have a long history with Roald Dahl and his family, and very, 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 very special man to me. And his books have always been a staple in my life. I've always had a set of his books. I've always had them there. And then a few years ago, they started chucking out Roald Dahl movies. Some of them are great. Some of them are horrible. But now the latest kind and Broadway shows. They've done some Broadway shows there. But now the latest kind of trend with Dahl is now they're remaking the ones they've already made, which is hence why we're here. We had, with his films, he's had shows out there. He's had Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory, which is a take on Charlie and the Chocolate Factory, which surprisingly is the most inaccurate to Charlie and the Chocolate Factory, the book. But it's beloved. It's a beloved film.
Yeah.
And then you had the remake of that, which was Charlie and the Chocolate Factory. That's the Johnny Depp one by Tim Burton, which is the book on screen.
That is the book on
screen. That film is the book to screen. I mean, perfect. I think that film's absolutely perfect. But most people hate it because it's not the 70s film that was beloved, but the 70s film has nothing to do with the book.
Right.
Anyway, so then you had James and the Giant Peach, was animated by Disney. That one's done extremely well. It's like this neat little claymation kind of animation. You have Fantastic Mr. Fox, which is also done by Disney, which had like a stop motion type of animation to it. So they used Dahl to do some like new animation techniques with his films. And the BFG by Disney, which was fantastic. If you want to see one of Dahl's stories done right, look at the BFG or Matilda. Matilda is another film that came out that was done extremely well for his stuff. And then we have Eso Trot, which just came out a couple of years ago on British television, which I've not seen yet. I love the book Eso Trot, so I'll have to check that one out. We also had, I believe, a television foreign film, French, of Danny the Champion of the World at one point, which is interesting. Anyway, so he's got a lot of meaning out there. Huh?
I believe that one. I believe they did an adaptation of that one, but don't quote me. I could be wrong.
Yeah, they did. I think it was only in France, though. I believe. Anyway, so he's got a lot of his work done. I mean, there's still a lot of his work left to do, which is why why they keep remaking these things is puzzling to me, because some of his best work has not been done yet. And you have the Twits, you have the Magic Finger, you have the Revolting Rhymes. I mean, you could do a really, really cool movie out of Revolting Rhymes. But there's a lot of big time stories too that he should get the green light before a remake, because these remakes My God. Okay, we're gonna talk about the witches today, which is Roald Dahl the Witches. I always have Roald Dahl's books available. But the Witches was done with Angelica Houston back in the
It was done in 1990.
90s, yeah, early 90s, yeah. And there's a new
1990 is when it came out.
and the movie was great. The
Yeah.
movie was a simplified version of the story. It had kind of, it took its own little liberties, but it really captured the spirit of Roald Dahl. It really captured what he was trying to. Because see, when Mr. Dahl writes, he writes around a character, or he writes around like when he wrote the BFG, it was around the giant and what it meant to be a giant in our world, and what a giant looked like, and how did a giant act and eat and all that stuff. That's why he wrote that. It wasn't necessarily the story about the giant and the girl. It was about the giant existing in our world. And so, like with witches, he wrote about the witches. Who are the witches? What do they look like? How do they sound? So that was the whole spirit of it, was who these witches, and then we have a story around it. And that first movie really captured that feel. It captured, who are these witches? Why are they here? What do they look like? And why should we be scared of them? And then they told the story around it. Whereas this new film now, which just came out last couple weeks ago, on HBO Max. It's the HBO Max original.
It dropped on the 22nd of October.
Anne Hathaway as in the role that Angelica Houston immortalized, and it basically took the story and threw it up in the air and see what landed. I mean, it's a mess. This new film is absolutely a mess. If HBO was going to contract with the Dahl estate to do one of his books, they should show something else. It's just show something that wasn't done before. I mean, my God, how many versions of Charlie and the Chocolate Factory are we going to have? And we still don't have a version of Charlie and the Great Glass Elevator, which is a better book, in my opinion, than Charlie and the Chocolate Factory. It's a sequel to it.
Right.
The Twits, or the Magic Finger, the Twits would play wonderfully on HBO Max. But hence here we are. We're redoing the Witches, and they struck out. In my opinion, this redo, absolutely just completely mismarked. Now, as a film itself, if you take the story that you know of the Witches, or even from the original movie or from the book, and you eliminate that from your mind, and you look at how the film was put together, and Octavia Spencer's performance, and the way they said it.
In my opinion, she's the only one that saved the film.
Yeah, they said it in the South instead of in England, because all of Dahl's books are British. He is a British man, and all of his films are all of his stories are set in England. They're very, very British cultured, all of his books, and so they removed that aspect of it and set it in the South, which opened the doors to have an African American cast, which was fine. It was great to see it culturally done differently. And Octavia Spencer was phenomenal in the grandmother role. But I felt this thing would have played better as an original if you would have done the story of the witches in the Deep South with the same type of movie, but made it like a redo or a sequel to the original Witches. The original Witches story exists, and the little boy and his grandmother went to that hotel in England, and they experienced all the things that they experienced in the book. So he exists. Maybe as an adult, he can be talking to this young kid in the new film, and let the generations of the Witches continue. I think this would have played really well. Yeah, it would have made a whole lot more sense because the movie was done well. So, so that's that. It just. But if you compare it to The Witches, the book, or the original film, it tries to take certain elements of the book and make it its own, which was so unnecessary and just really confused the plot, confused the narrative. The ultimate sin that they did in this film was they tried to change the design of the witches. And what they did with it was not something out of Roald Dahl's mind, not something out of Quentin Blake's illustrations. Those of you who don't know Quentin Blake, if you've ever picked up a Roald Dahl book, if you have children and you've grown up, I would suggest these books for your children. They're fantastic. In fact, when I get to Colorado, I will be reading all of these to my nieces and nephews because everybody should grow up on Dahl. Yeah. Wonderful imagination. But Quentin Blake was an illustrator of Roald Dahl's his entire life, his entire career. And Quentin Blake has illustrated all of Dahl's books. So every illustration you ever see in all of Dahl's books are done by the same man. This Quentin Blake, his partner. And you see these illustrations all the time.
Yeah.
How Quentin Quentin was very, very specific in following the directions of Mr. Dahl and how they designed these characters. So, like when you look at the BFG, you know what the BFG looks like. You look at the lead, that Grand High Witch, you know what the Grand High Witch looks like. You look at
Mhm.
Matilda, you know what she looks like. The Twits, we know what the Twits look like because they were designed to look like that. When
Right.
you change that central design, then you're going against completely what Roald Dahl did in his work, in his
I
literary
think
work.
I think
What?
they changed the design so that they could use more CGI, and then it failed on them.
Ugh,
Oh,
miserably.
it
It was like,
failed so bad.
yeah, Roald Dahl writes around a character, around what a character would do in this world. When he wrote the BFG, it was like, what would a giant do in the city? How would that act? And then the little girl story, followed. Same thing with the witches. Who are these witches? What do they look like? What do they do? What do they smell? And to
Hmm.
change that aspect of it, you're no longer doing the witches. You're
No, you're
doing a
doing
knockoff
something
of the witches your own way. So then why not make it a knockoff? Why not make it a redo or a sequel or something and not just call it the witches? Because they got the witches completely wrong. And for a film that's about the witches, that was written to be about the witches, and you get them wrong, you failed. You failed miserably.
Yeah.
I don't know how good the rest of the movie is. What they did with the witches, Roald Dahl's description and Quentin Blake's illustrations were very specific. They were bald, with
Hmm.
caps on their head, single hair growing out of their hair head, with long talon-like nails or hands, no toes, no fingers, no toes, and that was the simplicity of it. That was the beauty of it. This had freaking Joker face masks underneath their makeup, which made no
Yeah.
sense to any of it. It had 3 fingers, like an
Yes.
alien 3 fingers. They all had these like CG snakes that were part of their outfit, and the snakes came about, and they
And
all
what
had
was with what was with the one long toe on their foot?
yeah, one long
I didn't
talon
get
on
that.
their foot, and then the voice they all had this voice of so you're walking up to one of these women and they start talking to you like that. Yes, you know that they're not human. The
Hello.
whole point was these witches
That's-
exist in
you would
society.
think that that was an alien if you can't had if someone came up and talked to you like that, you would think that person is an alien and I want nothing to do with them.
Yeah, they existed in society. That's how what they were. That's what the person's story was. Witches were hidden everywhere. Even in the beginning of the movie tells that story. Witches are everywhere. Witches can be a nurse. They could be a bus driver. They could be,
And
a
they're
mother.
always women.
They're
They're
all there.
always
Well, not a mother, but yeah, they're always with you, and you never know if one is there. But they hate children, and if one of these bitches walks into a room, you know it's not human
mm-hmm.
because they were so bizarre. No,
Mm,
it was horrible. The
I know.
Angelica Houston movie. If you're gonna compare them,
I enjoy that one much, much, much more.
is what they got right was they simplified the story, so they didn't try and overcomplicate the story. They kept the basic narrative of the little boy's grandmother. They go to the hotel. The witches are there. Boom. Which is how the
Mm-hmm.
book reads. The book is very quick in the beginning. Gives some history on the witches, and boom, they're in the hotel. Whereas this one had a whole hour before it.
I know.
And then what the Angelica Houston movie got right, regardless of how silly it was with the Jim Henson puppetry and stuff, it was they got the witches right. Those witches in that movie walked out of Quentin Blake's illustrations. They were
Mm-hmm.
exactly what was described, and I think that was really important to the story. It actually captured the story. So I prefer that one. If anybody's
Yeah.
recommending any of these films, I would be like,
I
watch.
would go with the 1990 version.
Oh yeah, absolutely for the witches. First off, I'd say read his damn books.
Read the book.
If you've not read any of his books, read his books. They're if you're into if you follow Harry Potter, nowadays with Rowling, but you follow J.K. Rowling and Harry Potter and how she wrote, she was really inspired by Roald Dahl. Roald Dahl was a big inspiration to her, and so his style of writing is kind of in Potter a bit. His style of writing is unique. You could read any piece of literature and know it's a Roald Dahl.
Mm-hmm.
He's very, very specific in his style. So if you've not read him, you can read any of his books in one setting.
Oh
Just sit
yeah.
down and start plowing through him. He's great. He's dead, but he's great.
Mm.
He's got 16 novels, I believe. It's
Is it
16.
15 or 16? I thought it was 15. I thought it was 15. I could be wrong though.
Probably not counting Boy.
Okay, probably.
Boy is not a children's story.
Okay, that's why.
Boy is very adult story about coming of age. But you can buy them all in the box set. Boy comes with it. He's got really famous stuff as far as his novels were, if well-known stuff, household name stuff. Charlie and the Chocolate Factory, James and the Giant Peach, Fantastic Mr. Fox. Now the BFG is a household name because of Disney. Witches, Matilda. Matilda's a household name now because of the Broadway show. That's a new thing with Doll, is there's been like these new iterations on Broadway in major Broadway musicals. Now, how good any of them are, I've only seen Charlie and the Chocolate Factory, which I really thoroughly enjoyed, but it was not his work. Well, I think this year had nothing to do with Charlie and the Chocolate Factory.
Planning on reviewing Matilda? I think we are.
Yes.
In the Broadway series, correctly?
Yes. Yeah. Because Matilda, I've not seen. I've not even listened to Matilda, to tell you the truth. I've not heard the soundtrack or seen any of it. I'm not big on children singing in musicals. It's kind of so this is gonna be a lot. But Matilda is typical Roald Dahl. When you've got these real nasty adults and the children is like, so confused and coming of age, very Harry Potter-ish, coming of age, and they do something special. Notice in all of Roald Dahl's books, there's always a child. There's always a child figuring something out and doing something special. That's his style. That's where he comes up with these things. That there's the boy in the witches, and there's that's another thing that changed.
There's the motherly figure.
Yep.
Like the grandmother, and the grandmother in the original movie, I just adore her. I could listen to her for hours.
She's so fun. Yeah.
I just love her so much.
Yeah, it's a great. The Witches is a great story, in the same sense as like Matilda is a fun story. BFG, BFG has always been my favorite book by Roald Dahl. I've read the BFG more times than just about any other book in my life. And when the movie came out, the movie was perfection as far as what the book adaptation to screen was, but it didn't do it for me. It didn't capture the same magic that the book captures for me. There wasn't something special to me in it. And maybe it's because I hold the book so dear.
A lot of times that happens, though, when you compare books to movies. They don't necessarily balance.
Yeah, the emotion that I have reading the BFG, I got none of that watching the film. And that's what I was so excited when that film came out. Oh man, I was counting the days. I was losing my mind when that came out. When the previews came, you saw the BFG, and it was exactly like a Quentin Blake illustration. It was phenomenal, but it was like it didn't give me that same love, that same emotion that I had reading the book. Like I can read the book and I still go back to that child reading that book. It's amazing. Charlie and the Chocolate Factory has had so much history. It's Broadway musical. It's 2 movies. It's everybody thinks they know Charlie and the Chocolate Factory, and they don't, because everybody hated that second film, and that was the book. Charlie and the Chocolate Factory was.
I actually like the second film.
I prefer it. I prefer it.
I like them both, actually.
Oh yeah, so do I. I mean, the first one is classic in its own right, but it's a different story. But you want to get the book to screen. See, I always thought Tim Burton should have done both of them. He should have done Charlie and the Chocolate Factory and then done Great Glass Elevator, because he already had a great cast. He already had a real knack of the book, and just made it a 2-parter. And then that would have separated that from the original film, because everybody in our culture thinks of the original film as the definitive Charlie and the Chocolate Factory, and that's not the case. That's not really what it is at all. That's just a great movie with Gene Wilder. Now what the Broadway play has done, very interestingly, is the Broadway play is kind of original in its own right. Completely original in its own right, as far as how they did some of the characterizations and the parents and stuff. Then they've taken aspects of the book and aspects of the 1970s film and kind of mushed it all together. So it's like this patchwork of versions of Charlie and the Chocolate Factory all together, around these big, huge musical numbers. The musical numbers were on each of the kids' demise. It's a lot of fun in Factory, but it's not the book.
Like we were talking about before we started streaming, they had, for The Witches itself, each movie has aspects of the book, but neither one of them got them perfect. There's bits
Yeah.
and pieces that are still missing. But if we were to recommend any of you see either one of these movies, we would suggest that you see the 1990.
Oh yeah,
Be
sure.
over this one.
Well, what's also about is Roald Dahl always wrote these weird kind of backstory, history kind of things on his characters. And they're always strange. These strange little crazy tales that he tells. Like with Charlie and the Chocolate Factory, it was about Willy Wonka, down with that prince, and they made the prince the castle of chocolate, and it all melted. And then he goes to the island and meets the Loompas. All that's played out in the books. Whereas in the witches, you have the story of the witches. They're telling a history of how there's a witch and around. And in one of the stories, they talk about how there's a witch on the farm who turned this kid, I believe there's a boy in the book, into a chicken. And when he turned the boy into a chicken, everybody knew there was something was up. It's a really strange story. It's bizarre. That's in the book. So they wanted to use that chicken story, and it's really ill placed. It was like it was something to do with the grandmother and her history with witches, and it was this little girl, and they were best friends, and she laid green eggs, and
it was the grandmother's best friend or whatever, and she was turned into a chicken, and it happened really quickly. There was no context to it. They just kind of threw it in there.
They just kind of threw it in there. They're like, let's take one of Roald Dahl's really weird stories and just kind of shoehorn it in there. And it's like and then because they're so weird, because those little stories are so bizarre, you shoehorn that in there, it just doesn't make sense. It comes off really bizarre.
Yeah.
Whereas in the book, they're always kind of in the beginning. They're always kind of giving you some history. It kind of sets the tone of how strange Mr. Dahl can be in his writing. But
in a nutshell, that is the witches. Yeah, we were not fans of it, as you can tell.
You'll hear more Roald Dahl from us. We will be covering Roald Dahl for we're on our Broadway series though. I think we'll hit
Matilda.
That's something either one of us that have seen, and then we may touch Charlie and the Chocolate Factory then.
We'll see.
But Broadway series this week, coming up on Thursday, is Spring Awakening.
Yes.
We're going to cover Spring Awakening, both the original production and the Deaf West revival, which is
yes.
If you're a fan of Duck and Cheek, if you're a fan of coming of age musicals, fan of sexuality, come on over. Spring Awakening Thursday.
So we will be doing that Thursday at 8:00.
There you go.
Pacific time.
There you go.
So this has been our stream on Roald Dahl's The Witches.
This is a little thing to pop on and give you guys a distraction. Get off the TV, go away from it and from the news.
Yep.
Get over it. It's going to be what's going to be.
We just wanted to have a little bit of fun, talk about something that wasn't that. So
yep.
Here we are. Hope you guys enjoyed it. Please like and subscribe. Make sure you hit the little bell so you don't miss anything, because we drop videos several times a week. And there we go. Anything else to add before we leave?
I'm feeling hell. I'm moving this weekend. All that journey is going to be a lot of fun. We're doing a road trip now.
Yep.
Everything changes, so we'll be doing a road trip.
Everybody take care, and we will catch you guys in the next one. Take care.
Bye.